I gotta lock in. I gotta lock in like Faker. It's episode 28 of the Siege Show, presented by Jake and Guzz, and we've got the Montreal preview for this episode. Always a big one when we get to the majors, and we've got a lot to discuss. We've also got to discuss our little trip over to Thailand, guys. So we're going to start on that one first. We went over to the AOC Masters in Thailand. For those, of course, unfamiliar, we mentioned it in the last podcast. We'll be going over, having a bit of fun, playing some Valorant. So before we get into the major, we will touch on this because it was actually a really good trip. It was really exciting. We don't get to do this often, where we are the ones that go overseas and go play and be the players. And it was certainly an experience.
Yeah, it most certainly was. We were over there for how many nights? I think
it's like
4 nights.
It was pretty quick, 4 or 5 nights or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, in and out pretty quickly. But yeah, we landed. We were greeted with our like entourage or whatever, and we were like taking photos, flash photography, walking out. I felt like celebrities. It was crazy, and the scale of the entire event. Centered around the Thailand game show. It was basically, I mean, for us, the best reference is PAX Australia, for instance. It was basically that on steroids. It was crazy. I think on the Friday when we went in to sort of see the venue, that was way busier than like primetime PAX. It was just crazy, people everywhere. And yeah, over the course of those few days, we did several different activities and really culminated into that Valorant event. So you had 2 Siege casters playing Valorant, and we had a lot of fun, but unfortunately we weren't the best. But we also didn't finish last. Yeah, we were in it as a team.
We did. Well, I mean, look, to dive deeper into it, of course, this was something that was completely out of the blue. And when we got the message to say, hey, do you want to come over to Thailand and do some Valorant? My initial thought was it was for casting, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. We do a bit of VCT. And they're like, no, you're playing as like, Australian represent. And I was like, oh, we got to play. And look, I haven't played Valorant. I haven't played it for a while. I used to play a bit back in the day when it first came out, but I haven't played in a while. So I'm more of a Counter-Strike man when it comes to that particular genre. But, we get there. Obviously, it's great. We're greeted in terms of hospitality to an amazing standard, which is always really good to see, because I wasn't really sure going into it what it was going to be like. But, it was like 5-star hotel. Everything was provided. It was really easy to kind of be a part of it. We had this amazing media day shoot where we're just taking like photos and videos. We're doing like walks and stuff, and they're taking B-roll footage. It looks amazing. It's a shame we didn't really get to see much of it. I don't know if there's any way for us to get that footage, but maybe one day we can ask them. But obviously the goal was to kind of just go over there, play some Valorant, and then come back, talk about it, etc. And it was a really, really good event. Like you said, a little bit PAX-like. And again, we weren't sure what it was going to be in terms of, was it going to be this like big stage? And it ended up being a really big, giant booth. Like, I don't even know if you can call it a booth. It was a mini arena essentially. And obviously it was a lot of fun. Now the event itself, though, when it came to the playing, we didn't do our homework. We winged it a little bit, and we're like,
we'll be honest, we didn't even know the full format for the event going in. We
thought it was like maybe a 5v5 like content creator show match, and then we get there and it's like, it's 1v1s and 2v2s. Which kind of makes sense. It was, us two. So we do this 1v1. We get seeded into the bracket. It's us versus Korea, 2 lovely girls that we met on the trip. And you went first because we didn't realize like how good the other players were or whatever. And you got shit on. You got shit on by a Korean girl.
It was kind of close.
I don't think it was close. In fact, the round differential cost us from moving forward. So in the 1v1, so then I go play 1v1. So Guzz loses his 1v1. I have to then go play against, I think it was Taiwan. I clutch up, of course. I go 4-2, 4-2. I win easy, best of 3. And then I get out of the game, guys, and I find out we didn't progress because the round differential was not good enough. So I win a 1v1, and I don't even get to go forward. I'm literally just 1-0. I'm out of the tournament. So I was a little bit peeved about that. And then we get into 2v2. And then if you want to talk about me being peeved,
that tilt was crazy.
I was tilted because the 2v2 was not an actual 2v2. We had to play both of us at the same time with a mouse and a keyboard. That's right. I'm not, fibbing here. I was on mouse, you were on keyboard. So all I could do was control the mouse and all you could do was control the keyboard. And that was, of course, for everyone. We ended up losing 2-1, or was it? No, we went 1-1 in the first matchup, which actually was the eventual winners of this particular format.
Yeah,
which is
what
amazing.
we found out was, so this event was actually crazy in terms of like format, right? Because we had not only map bans, but we also had agent bans as well. So there was a decent amount of strategy that went into this, and we eventually found out probably the most broken meta that you could do with this particular setup, which was running the neon, right? Yeah, we ran neon, and for those who don't play Valorant, you have like this sprint ability. So we just sprinted around the map, and because it was so difficult to maneuver around, it was actually a pretty powerful tool. And yeah, we took a map off the eventual winners, but unfortunately, I think we then played some games where it got banned out or something, right? And we couldn't abuse it as much. I don't think you also couldn't play the same agent twice.
You couldn't play it twice. So when we then played our next match, we were like straight away, let's just go neon first. And this is the other part of the equation. We were playing against the actual players who qualified through qualifiers.
Yes.
So like these guys are good. These guys are radiant. These guys are like pros in their region, and we're us. So
we're just running default skin Andes, and
and they're on their own accounts with their knives and skins, and we're just Anyway, so we got up against these guys. I can't remember the region off the top of my head, and we ended up losing. We lost the first round with neon, and I was tilted. Guys, I get tilted.
There was one round where I may have had my knife out for a little bit too long, and I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Jake never recovered from that. He was just gone.
We did recover in the second map. We actually pushed it to OT and then eventually lost, but and then that was the end of it.
We had a lot of close rounds in some of those games as well that were like genuine 50-50s.
Yeah,
so we did okay.
In the end, I think we finished 6th overall. I think you might have taken a picture of it if you can pop that up. But I mean, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we didn't end up last. We didn't last.
Yeah, we beat quite a few of the invited teams. So
yeah, and it was a lot of fun. We were supposed to do like a 5v5 show match, but time unfortunately did not permit. And that was the day. I mean, it was only supposed to be really that day, and it was certainly a long day. But then, and this is where shout out to AOC. These guys then took us to Top Golf, which was a lot of fun. And
I might find a video. I'll put a video of that up too.
And we finished 2nd, Guzz, in Top Golf. Now,
I carried you in Top Golf, though.
I do have a picture of me beating you in a 1v1, but I felt like it was I did better than I thought at Top Golf, because the first couple of swings were not good, and it was not looking good. We finished 2nd, and we got like a little prize, which was great. Obviously, we had a lot of fun. I had never even been to Top Golf, let alone even played golf, and the fact that we finished 2nd was great. And then we went on a river cruise, guys, to finish it all off.
Yeah,
a nice romantic cruise.
Yeah, AOC and the team treated us really well, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, again, shout out to them. Hopefully, we've been able to sort of show off the event a little bit here. We've had a bunch of videos up in the background, if I've done my editing job correctly. So hopefully captures the magic of the event. And yeah, it'd be really fun to go back, because just the scale of it for me was just the crazy thing, especially on the Friday. For whatever reason, I was like, wow, it's Friday and it's just packed. And yeah, it was a lot of fun playing in the event. We may have had mixed success, but I think we did okay.
Yeah, I think we did all right. We had a lot of fun, and everyone there had a lot of fun as well. So obviously a big thank you to AOC for taking us out to Thailand for the event. It was a short trip, but it was a fun trip, and hopefully it's the case that maybe we can do so once again in the future, and if we do, maybe we can do some more content around it. But it certainly was something different, something unique that we don't get to do all that often. And look, maybe this podcast is a big helping hand for us to be able to go over there and do it. So of course, thank you to all of our viewers. A little bit of a shill moment here, but thank you for the trip to Thailand from everybody. And then of course, so we finished the trip. And as we're kind of like, everyone's packing up and we're all kind of like, holiday blues, and we're all getting ready to go home, we were speaking to some of the guys at AOC, and they're like, hey, do you want to try out our new monitor, which is the Aegon Pro? And I'm like, well, it's 1440p and it's an OLED. And I'm like, that's me, baby. I will say, I was like, immediately, I was like, I've got one, but I need a second one. You're my savior. And Guzz, I know that you have been a 1080p 24-inch warrior your whole life. This is your first experience, and we'll obviously like overlay some of the unboxing and some of the test footage of it. But it really is, you know, top of the range when it comes to these new QD OLED 240 hertz. The response time is like what, 0.03, which is amazing obviously for FPS shooters when it comes to like Siege, for example, and features HDR. So like when it comes to modern 2024 monitors, there's really not that many better.
Yeah, I feel like I'm actually a pretty good case study for this particular like style of monitor, because I think I've probably said in our group chats or whatever over the last few months, I've been considering upgrading, and for me, I was a little bit skeptical on like the OLED technology, and then also having to go to a slightly larger form factor just because I'm so used and so comfortable to 24. But yeah, set it up this afternoon, didn't really take long at all. Booted up some Siege and already starting to adjust to it, and you can really tell straight away. It may only be like a couple of milliseconds different compared to a more traditional monitor style, but the response time actually feels super sharp and responsive, which was really surprising for me. And then in terms of image quality, color, true blacks, etc., it definitely does look far superior to a more traditional monitor. So I don't know. I mean, to be completely honest, I don't know if long term this is going to be like a definite replacement for me, but I could definitely see it being a part of my setup in one way or another, whether it maybe is just for more casual games, or if I continue to enjoy it maybe for competitive matches like Siege and other titles as well. So genuinely was actually quite impressed as a skeptic, and yeah, looking forward to using it more.
Yeah, and look, to reference as well for those watching right now, because I know usually a lot of people kind of skip the more like quote unquote ad portions of videos. If you're watching this, thank you. But this is not technically a direct sponsor or anything. We are not obligated to, you know, talk nicely about the product or anything like that. It's like, here, have one. If you like it, you like it. If not, you don't. But I mean, this is for me coming from an experience where, so a couple of months back, I already got myself a different monitor, which was essentially the same thing, but 360 hertz rather than 240 hertz. Everything else pretty much the same for what it's worth. And when it comes to this monitor, you think like, for what is essentially a cheaper price, and the only difference is 240 versus 360, is that a difference point for you, for me? And honestly, again, this is coming from somewhere, my daily driver is essentially the same monitor, but just with a higher refresh rate. The difference between 240 and 360, negligible. I mean, like it's kind of there, but not really, not to the same degree. If you're going from 60 hertz monitor to like 144, that's going to be the biggest gap. If you want to look more into actual like monitor technology, because I'm not the guy for it, but there is diminishing returns when it comes to these things. The gap, you know, just because you see 60 to 144, oh, that's not that much, but 240 to 360, that's an extra 120. There is diminishing returns. So I would personally say the difference between 240, 360, bugger all. And if you're paying like almost 50% of the price, like it is absolutely worth it. If it is a far cheaper deal, the other thing you have to consider as well is, can you even get 360 FPS in your particular games with your particular setup? If you can only get 240, well, then 240 is more than enough anyway. And if the difference between 240 and 360 is not that much, then yeah, it's that nice sweet spot. QD OLED. Response time is amazing. 240 hertz means you don't have to worry about hitting, you know, that massive 360 FPS target, which, don't get me wrong, in games like Siege, Valorant, I was going to say Counter-Strike, but in this day and age, who knows, with people's setup, Counter-Strike's getting a bit weird to run. You know, and certainly if you're playing AAA titles, I mean, how many AAA titles maxed out are you going to get 360 FPS? Like, you're just not really going to get that anyway. So I think it's a fantastic monitor, good price point. Very much a big shout out to the guys at AOC for providing those to us, and certainly for me. I know you're gonna test drive it and see if 27 inch is going to be your go-to.
I need more time.
I already converted to 27 inch like 8 years ago, so like for me, I was just like perfect. Replace my old shitty IPS second monitor, bang. Now got OLED on 2 screens. I'm loving it, so I'm happy. Obviously, like I'll still be using my 360 hertz as the primary, because like you may as well, and it also means less effort for me having to move things around. But obviously, it's a really good monitor, the Aegon Pro. if you're in the market, I recommend it. I don't know what else to say, really. Again, it's not like hashtag ad. We're not offering discount codes or anything like that. If you just happen to be, looking into monitors, you like 27-inch, this is pretty much as good as you're going to get for its price point. I genuinely believe that. So if you're a 24-inch and you're not sure, I don't know what my advice would be, guys. If you're a 24-inch lover, how do you even think about testing 27-inch? Do you go to like a store?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you would have to go to a store or a exhibition and try it. That would be my best recommendation. Because I mean, even me going to Thailand at the event, that was literally my first ever time. Trying like a QD OLED. And first time going back to a 27-inch for several years. So, yeah, like I said, it definitely takes a bit of adjustment, and I'm not 100% certain that I'll stick with it. But I've been pleasantly surprised so far as a skeptic. So
yeah, cool. Well, I'm a believer. You're a skeptic, and we're very happy again to wrap this all up. Of course, we've got the major to talk about, but a big thank you to AOC for the trip, for the monitors. It was a great time. Everyone was lovely. All of the staff, all of the people behind the scenes as well, production crew, everyone that was involved, all the other players from their respective regions as well. Everyone was nice. Everyone was lovely. It was my second time to Thailand, so it was great to go back. Very humid, Guzz. As you are now aware, you've been to Thailand now.
Not as bad as Japan, bro. In some way, I stand by that. But it was warm.
Yeah. Very, very
It's gonna be
nice.
a shock in the system going to Montreal, that's for sure.
Oh, well, there's the perfect segue from the Guzzler. We are indeed heading off to Montreal as we now talk to the major. We go over to Montreal and we will be going there. That's right. We obviously have been announced on the talent announcement that did go out. So, yay. I don't know what else to say. I will say it's our first major since Copenhagen last year, which is actually quite staggering to think about. Like if you put it into picture, Copenhagen feels like a lifetime ago. The fact that since then, we missed out on Atlanta, we missed out on Manchester, and honestly, the reasons were fine. American event, European event. I think we've spoken about that plenty in the past regarding those particular events and the likelihood of us getting really any work in general. We always, never deserve anything or owed anything. So when Montreal comes around, we're sitting there like, hopefully, and, prayers answered. We haven't been to Montreal, and first major in a long time, and first Siege event on the calendar. That is technically on the calendar at a global since the wonderful Six Invitational, of course, where we did the grand final. So it feels really good to be back at the top. Thoughts, Gus, before we kind of get into things?
Thoughts? Well, yeah, much like you haven't been to Canada at all, right?
No.
Yeah, so first time at
Crossing
going
it
to
off
Canada
the
for
list.
me. Yeah, first time in North America for a long time as well. So yeah, super excited for that. Not so much looking forward to the travel time, which is again like another 24-hour fucking 3-leg grind. So
It's yuck.
that's going to be a lot of fun. The one positive is this isn't really public information, but I'm like think I'm going to get arrested for sharing it, is the fact that we aren't actually casting stage 1 at all. Blessing and a curse in some respects, because it means we may miss the Chiefs if they do get knocked out. But it does mean that we quote unquote miss the lower quality games, and we can kind of jump into the storylines that have already developed by the point in time that we're there. So
just to touch on that, it's not as if we're missing out on anything per se. It's just the way the schedule's been done. Everyone, like all the caster pairs, get a scheduled amount of days off. Our days off just happen to be for the 2 days of phase 1, which means the good news is we do every single day of phase 2, which is great. We miss none of the higher quality games. Whereas obviously all of the other pairs will have a day off or two throughout that period. So I think we're quite fortunate in that regard. It does mean it's going to be like a very fast tracked kind of event. We literally fly in and then we are working the next day. No rehearsal. I think we get in at like 11 o'clock at night. By the time we get to the hotel, straight to bed, wake up next day, working. So
on the grind.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, that first day might be a little bit rusty, so forgive us in advance, but we'll give it our all.
Yeah. Before we Okay, before we get into the preview, a couple of quick little patch changes. Now, usually with these videos, we kind of go over the most recent patch. There's not too much to go over, like line by line. So a couple of ones I want to just quickly hit. I'm going to kind of rapid fire them out for you guys, and then you can kind of talk about them. So Mozzie, pests increase from 3 to 4, which seems pretty strong, and also getting impacts. Now, Zero has gone from 4 cams to 6, which I know a couple of people on Twitter initially on that was like, holy shit. And Sophia, hard breach instead of breach, soft breach. Thoughts on these changes heading into Montreal?
At the pro level, negligible. I think Mozzie might get a little bit more playtime, and we could see an uptick on like Mute Mozzie combo for map extensions from defense, which could be kind of interesting. And now having impacts to create rotates if necessary. It means you can drop a shotgun elsewhere, but that's probably going to be a bit more niche. Zero cams 4 to 6 is a significant uptick, but it's so difficult in this meta to justify having somebody committed to like going around and setting up cams. That takes a lot of time, and that manpower typically can be more efficient elsewhere. So again, we might see a small uptick, and a couple of creative teams could use it, but I wouldn't be banking on seeing a ton of Zero. And then as for Zofia, again, if Azami continues to be really prevalent and teams want to bring an LMG, we might see the Zofia LMG now with hard breaches backup, I guess. But again, I don't think any of these changes are going to be too meta shifting. Again, we're in this shield meta at the moment, and none of these really change any of that. So,
were you surprised that the shields didn't get any tweaks heading into the major? And do you think that they will get tweaks before SI?
I think they will. In fact, I will stall out for as long as possible and bring up the notes, because I'm pretty sure they actually did.
They say that they were keeping an eye on it. Did they say that line? I think I remember reading it. Like,
yeah, it's in the designer notes. Yeah, they said with the shield update, where we've seen an encouraging evolution of shield usage overall. They have more impact and a more relevant option than before. However, we do not want them to become overly oppressive. And with those season's learnings, we will be tuning them for Year 9 at Season 4. So okay. Expect a change before SI, which is probably, I think,
abuse your shields while you can.
The best way to go about it. Yeah, abuse it while you can. For teams like Furia that can't, or that have shown that they're not as effective with shields, they'll be praying that they get nuked.
Yep.
I don't think they will, but
I don't think they'll get nuked, but hopefully they don't, because honestly, the track record sometimes when it comes to changes in really any video game is like it can go one of two ways, where it just takes a hard nerf or it just gets kind of like a bit of a soft treatment. So we'll see what happens, and we'll keep an eye on that one moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, Montreal Major preview time as we discuss everyone's favorite time of the year, back end of the year, November. It's Christmas time almost, and it's major time. So we've obviously got
you got the Christmas tree up already, mate.
Oh, mate, as soon as Halloween's done, you know what it's like. Just straight to that Christmas tree. Get the pumpkins out, get the candy canes in. So we've got a couple of talking points here before we get into the brackets. We're going to get into phase 1 bracket, phase 2 bracket, our major winner prediction, etc. And kind of leading in from that major winner prediction here is kind of the first talking point before the brackets, which is Team BDS and their position coming into this major as what I personally think, and maybe what you think, and maybe what the general public thinks is like the overwhelming favorite. But how overwhelming is it? And even are they? I'm sure some could maybe make cases for other teams, FaZe potentially. What are your thoughts here? Is BDS like the dead set favorites? Should this be their event?
Well, I mean, someone can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, because there's every world in which I am. But I feel like I was pretty hot on BDS for Manchester as well. Of course, they go on to make the grand final, and Beast Coast make one of the most insane miracle runs we've seen in the history of the sport, go on and beat them at that event. But BDS can, of course, fall back on a strong result at the Esports World Cup. And again, their stage 2 for the EU is outstanding again. So BDS look really rock solid. I just don't think there's a team that's quite on their level on paper. It then just
do they do a
down to
Manchester
conversion.
again, though? That's the question, right? Like, you think about...
I think they make the grand final again. I don't know if a more, I guess, traditional matchup or predictable matchup against another high quality team will actually favor them or not. But I would be shocked if BDS don't make the grand final. At minimum, they're going to make the grand final. Who's going to join them is, I think, the much tougher question to answer.
Anyone.
Throw the names in the hat and draw it out. This stage has been bonkers.
Yeah.
It could be any team from either phase, to be completely honest.
You've got so many teams that went to Manchester that are now missing Montreal, vice versa for those making Montreal that miss Manchester. SI points are thrown in the air like confetti. It's a crazy time. Even crazier when you've got CL4L making the major, guys, but then all of the drama attached recently, which I guess at this point of the pod coming out here for the preview for the major coming out in a couple of days, somewhat oldish news, but something we've still got to kind of touch on. So regarding Tristan, Uzi comes in, he'll be the sub. The way things were going initially was like I was expecting even more drama, potentially others may be missing or whatever, but at the very least it's kind of like one out, one in, but it's just trying to decipher what has happened here with Tristan is quite unique to our esport, because I don't think I've ever seen, in fact, to any esport, I don't think I've seen anything like this before.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I feel like it's classic North American conspiracy theories. It's like we've tuned into a cable news network on my Twitter feed a couple of days ago with all these wild theories coming out as to what's happened, and I can't speak on what's true or what's not. I genuinely have absolutely no idea and no clarification as to what's true and what's not, and frankly, none of that really matters in the context of the event. Unfortunately, now for the team, they're pretty much cooked. The only way they're going to have impact at the major, in my eyes, is by having that 5 stack that got them to the major, and they could look to carry that positive momentum forward into the event and do like a Beast Coast-esque run, breaking that apart now. And with
there's no pressure though, right? Like there's no pressure at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's no pressure factor, I suppose, and that may help, but no pressure only gets you so far. You still have to have like the good core fundamentals as a team. You can contrast that to like Chiefs, for instance. I don't think Chiefs are under a ton of pressure, but at least they have players with a bit more experience and their foundation is there and they've got a full roster. CL, on the other hand, have unfortunately kind of crumbled at that final hurdle of getting everybody to the event, and it's probably not going to bode well for them. They could maybe like go in and play zero pressure, ranked meta, abuse shields as much as possible, and in this kind of meta, that kind of volatility may work for them, but yeah, it's probably going to hurt.
Speaking of volatility, of course, last major's winners, Beast Coast, do not return. They do not have a chance to defend their trophy, and also no Furia. The SI winners, the previous 2 majors of last year. So it does mean we are going to have a third different winner. So Atlanta Furia, of course, W7 at the time, Manchester Beast Coast, and then a new champion here at Montreal, which is really good for the scene. You know, I mean, as great as it is seeing that Furia dynasty in terms of last year with the majors and getting the hammer, I also think seeing different teams win is always a good thing. Even if I felt like at the time, Beast Coast, I remember in the review, I was like, fluke. They won't be able to do it again. And not only can they not do it again, it's because they didn't qualify. Told you so. Told you so. Everyone that gave me shit in the comments in the review, told you so.
Look, at the end of the day, they don't qualify for Montreal being
but they will be
Beast Coast,
SI.
But they're top of the standings. They're at SI.
So we'll see.
BDS, Dark Zero Phase,
if they win the hammer, I'm going to cop so much shit.
That would be such a stupid storyline, though. Imagine coming out of nowhere, winning a major, dropping out of the next, and then coming back and winning the fucking hammer.
I would be all
sick,
for it,
but it's not. It's not likely.
I'd be all for it. I'm not a Beast Coast hater in the same way that you're not a Nova hater. I just kind of speak facts, guys. I just speak facts.
Hey, we'll talk about the Nova hate later. Don't worry. Maybe I've got a bit more love to give. On Furia as well, they are just outside the confirmed team. So M80 in 7th place, 350 points. Furia 345, and then not confirmed.
It was 350 last year, the cutoff. Will it be once again? And if it is, then Furia will have to go
it is
through
top
LCQ.
16 this time around, so they've got to be careful that some of the teams lower down on the standings don't jump.
They're going to need help. I think that's the best way to put it. They're going to need some things to go their way, which is not a good position to be in. Obviously, they're going to be quite disappointed. Had they just qualified, they would have basically
The good thing for them is, though, that 3 of the 4 teams below them, Bleed, PSG, GG, didn't qual.
Yeah.
So they have a bit of a buffer.
Last one on Furia, very quickly before we go into the bracket. If Furia can come back throughout the time that they've had now in terms of stage 2 to SI, that whole period, of course, no major, revamp, regroup, go to SI, and win the hammer for the second time in a row, what does that do for their dynasty talk? Because you win major SI, but then you don't win major, you don't even make major, but then you come back, win hammer. It's not quite that Cinderella, like super juggernaut dynasty, but it would be back-to-back hammers.
I think it would prove that the shields were quite broken. And look, if shields get nuked in the next patch, and that results in Furia then being successful at SI,
proof is in the pudding.
Maybe people will be begging for the shields to get brought back up to strength. I don't know. Yeah. It's so difficult. A lot of it does hinge, I genuinely do think, on that patch. And depending on which way it kind of goes, it's either going to... Either way, it's probably going to bolster Furia's chances a little bit, provided that it is somewhat of a significant nerf. But to what extent, we'll have to wait and see. If shields continue to be meta going into SI25, yeah, they might be in a little bit of strife. That's provided they qual. That they should, but...
Let's go into the phase 1 bracket, shall we? Now, we've both done our predictions for this. The way we'll do it is... I'll go first for this one, and then you can go first for phase 2, and we'll do it that way. Okay. So for phase 1, we've got Black Dragons versus CL4L, G2 versus CAG, Alpha versus Falcons, Chiefs versus Fear X. Now I'll do the I'll get my prediction up here for the play-ins, and I've gone for G2 Esports and Chiefs in the upper bracket to qualify. Let me finish.
Okay, I didn't say anything.
And then in the lower bracket, I've got Black Dragons and CAG.
Take a guess at how many teams we have in the same position. Like how many we share in common out of the 4.
As in like qualifying overall, or just like in upper bracket, lower bracket positions?
Upper bracket, lower bracket.
Oh, I reckon 1 in the upper bracket, 1 in the lower bracket.
1, 2. So we got G2 in the upper bracket, and I have CAG and Black Dragons in the lower bracket.
So no Chiefs love.
No Chiefs love. I'm sorry, guys.
Who have you got in the upper bracket? Wait,
who do you think?
If it's not Chiefs, you've gone Fear X. You've gone for Nova.
Yeah.
I can't believe it, guys. Now, very quickly, of course, I'm sure by now everyone is aware, Jax joined Fear X, visa issues, couldn't play, traveled all the way to Korea, playoffs, thought, okay, here we go. He's going to get them into the... He doesn't play. Okay, they stick with Nova. They get to the major. Jax is going. And then Jax is departing the team. That's the end of Jax. Nova stays. They're taking Nova to the major. And you think he's going to take them to the promised land, which is phase 2. So I'm assuming you think it's... The caveat being the winner of Chiefs Fear X goes up a bracket. Is that how you think it?
Yeah, almost definitely. And I think it may have been Carter, actually, that reached out for some Chiefs notes. And I said there that in my eyes, the Chiefs Fear X game is almost 50-50. I think it's about a 55-45 to Fear X. So look, people can laugh at my prediction later if Chiefs make it. I probably deserve it a little bit coming from O's, but I don't think it's as clear cut as it may seem. Fear X have far more experience and actually have some okay results as of recent overseas. Chiefs are still unproven to an extent with a couple of debutants on LAN. They're going to be undoubtedly nervous, and I just don't know about Chiefs at an international level. It's so unproven, and we have so much history of APAC teams, and specifically taking multiple events to warm up. You think about Bliss at Copenhagen, they got absolutely shit on. Yes, it was by teams better than Fear X, but I still think it goes to prove that just that shock factor of being thrown into the international environment is rough. And yes, they have a few players with that experience, but yeah, it's going to be rough. Tex hasn't been there for a while, so don't forget that either. So I'm skeptical on Chiefs. But again, 55-45 split. That FearX Chiefs game should be very close.
How much pressure do you put on someone like Jigsaw in a match like this?
A lot.
A lot.
He should be farming this game. If he's not top fragging this game, then I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Simple.
I'm very curious. I really hope they qualify so we can actually hang out with them a little bit too. Because if they if they don't make it out of phase one, we're going to see them at the airport when we come in.
I'm hedging my bets here. Right? If I lose the prediction, it's great because the Chiefs guys are still there. We'll get to hang out and cast them.
Smart.
If they're out, then my prediction was right, and I'll get some alpha packs. So it's a win-win.
The other matchup that is in that portion of the bracket, Alpha Team versus Team Falcons. Neither of us giving those two a chance, seemingly, as we don't have them
Maybe
going
Falcons.
through.
Falcons an outside chance, but low.
Yeah. Alpha Team, again, admittedly, coming over from LATAM, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, I think Ragnar and Martin are like the only maybe two players that I've even heard of. I'm not even too sure. Actually, and to touch on it, so they've got visa issues with Martin, Gaspro, and Nazar. So 3 out of 5 of their team aren't going. So, I mean, if they're beating anyone at this major with two players on the core roster, they're doing some funky stuff.
I should have flown us down earlier. We could have played.
Yeah. So a little bit unfortunate for Alpha Team. It's one thing to miss one player. It's another thing to miss 3. So that's going to be incredibly rough. We'll see if they can do anything. We're talking 0 expectations. They're like -10 expectations. Team Falcons, as you said, I think certainly you can't sleep on Team Falcons. They're more than capable. I could see a world in which they could beat both Chiefs or FearX and qualify through. I wouldn't be shocked. I certainly think they can do it. I'm just putting my faith in the APAC teams in this instance. To the top side, we've got G2 and CAG. We've both got them going through. Now, again, there's this bracket flip. So, like, obviously, I've got G2 going through upper bracket. You've got G2 going through upper bracket. I mean, CAG then get to play the losing teams of, like, your FearXs, your Chiefs, your Alphas, your Falcons. That's a pretty good run for, I think, a CAG team that's so experienced. They really should be making phase 2. If they don't, it's a calamity. And that's the way that I view it in terms of them.
Yeah, I agree. The whole bracket is really quite intriguing because you draw a line through the middle and there's a very definitive split where the upper half is considerably stronger than the lower half. So Cyclops have been unfortunate to find themselves in that position. Don't expect them to beat G2, but they should find more comfort in that lower bracket run. So I think they'll find success there. And likewise with Black Dragons being drawn the short straw, but beating Fury and the LCQ can't be looked past. They're definitely a strong team that could form quite well to the meta as well, which I think they'll be able to abuse quite nicely. So I think, yeah, Black Dragons quite a decent shout of making it through, and probably could do a bit of damage in that second phase as well. Probably more so than Cyclops if they are to both qual through the lower bracket.
Yep. I'm imagining Black Dragons will lose the upper bracket semi-final to G2 and then bounce down and come through with CAG. That's the way I'm kind of, which would be, and then why we kind of talk about that top half of the phase 1 bracket, 3 out of the 4 to go through. Yeah, I think that one's pretty much done in terms of phase 1. We'll go over to phase 2 and I'll get your caveat predictions for this because you don't want to lock them in on the website. You want your points. You want to wait and see. But I've already done one. I've locked them in. I'm confident. Guys, what have you gone with?
Have you locked in your finals yet? Are you that confident?
You can't do the finals yet. Otherwise I would have.
Yeah, so look, these are my playoff predictions that I will change when I'm undoubtedly wrong or, wanting to change my mind depending on how phase 1 plays out. But we can start with the first and second teams first. So these are the teams that will go through flawlessly and win all 3 matches. I have BDS and FaZe.
Cool.
Your turn to speak now.
I also have BDS and FaZe. I think that's a pretty strong point in terms of those two teams respectively. BDS, for what they've been able to do Esports World Cup, they've run at Manchester. FaZe have been just up there for years. and the competition. It feels almost like to me, and this could seem a little bit wrong, but I'm just going to say it anyway. It almost feels like FaZe have kind of stayed about the same, but the competition around them has kind of faltered, except for BDS kind of coming back up and then maybe leapfrogging them. So that's the way I kind of view it. Look, I wouldn't be totally shocked if it's not FaZe. I could see them maybe dropping a game and going through, as the third, fourth, or fifth team. But you got to put someone there, and I think it's just very easy to say FaZe. What's your next one, Guzz?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So third, fourth, fifth. So these are the teams that will drop a match. Sonics, Team Secret, Dark Zero.
Wow. I only got one out of those three, if you want to take a guess.
Secret?
No. I went with Dark Zero, W7M, and Team Liquid. I'm feeling a Brazilian bounce back. W7M. I like what I see from them, and maybe it's a part of, if you recall, the Esports World Cup where they make the grand final.
Yeah, true.
They didn't have a great showing in the grand final. They were really lackluster, really poor, but better for the experience is the way that I kind of look at it. And I think that they're the kind of team, many kind of associate W7M and like when you say W7M, you still almost feel and think like that old Furia roster, but these guys since joining W7M have actually gone leaps and bounds since the old Lost One days. I actually think they've improved dramatically to the point that they're right up there. Not quite FaZe BDS up there, but I do genuinely think that they, and a lot of this also depends on who plays who and whatnot. It's very difficult to predict this. Good luck if you get them all right. But yeah, I think they could have a little bit of a run. And then I've got Liquid, of course, so I think that's a fine bet. Liquid's certainly more than capable of being able to, win their share of games. 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8. So these are the teams that will scrape through. I have Virtus Pro, Team Liquid.
Yep.
And the only team that I have from Phase 1 that I predicted to make it through, G2.
So I've gone G2 as well, but I actually did some research into this, Guzz, which is very unlike me.
Oh, God.
There has been, since Copenhagen, always one team that has played in... I mean, Copenhagen was different because they all played Phase 1. But if you look at Atlanta and Manchester as the two most recent examples, there has been always at least one team that played Phase 1 that made it to Phase 3. Always one team. And G2 fits that profile really, really well. That's why you've picked it. You know that. And I just feel like you kind of have to continue that tradition. I've also gone Team Secret and Sonics. So I wanted to go Virtus Pro.
So that's our only different team, right? Is you had W7M in, and I had VP, right?
VP. But for me, I wasn't obviously hesitant on W7M. I was hesitant on... And VP, I wanted to get in. I initially selected them. I'm always a big VP fan because I always feel like they do well internationally. And then I go and look at their records. And the last two majors, I'll double check it again, but they haven't actually made it out of Phase 2. It was only SI.
And if it doesn't... Yeah.
SI, they finished 3rd. They had an amazing run at SI, but you go back to Atlanta, 9th to 11th. You go back to Copenhagen, 9th to 11th, and they didn't even make Manchester. So I'm looking at this more so from a major perspective, and I love VP. I always think they're a great team, and sometimes they're a little bit underrated, I honestly think, over in Europe. And I wouldn't be shocked if they do make it through to Phase 3, but you kind of look at the numbers and you look at the stats and you say, well, they don't have a good history when it comes to majors. So... That's the way I sit with them. They were the toss-up with either Secret, Sonics, kind of throw them all in a bit of a bundle. So we'll go to maybe some of the teams then that we have discounted, if you will. So I think we're pretty low on APAC for this event. We aren't sending the best APAC teams. It's fair to say. No GG.
Yeah,
no,
I just realized we didn't actually... Oh, God, I didn't put a single APAC team in to make it Phase 3.
But this is the thing. There's no Bleed. There's no Gaming Gladiators.
Oh.
There's two teams that have been able to show they've got the capabilities of going deep and having good runs from APAC. All the others that are there have been there before. We'll touch on Elevate, but your D+, your Scars, your Fear X's, your CAGs, there's no hope. I'm sorry, but there isn't. I mean, if they go on a run, it's a miracle run, and I'll be very happy to see it, but it's unlikely.
I think one team will make it through, but I just... it's so random as to which team it will end up actually being that I don't have any
who do you
confidence
take
putting in my
out?
prediction.
That's the problem. Who do you take out? I mean, on paper, it's so hard to fit them in. I love Elevate. They go straight phase 2 because of the way the seeding has worked. Of course, for those unfamiliar, GG had it in phase 1. Elevate have gotten it in this phase. But they don't have the experience. You know, they're not a bleed. If it had been bleed phase 2, I would have probably snuck them in. I would have maybe snuck them in. It would have been hard. Maybe I would have taken out G2 or Secret, but I could have easily advocated for that, but I just can't for Elevate. It's going to take something very special. I really hope, and honestly, my expectations for APAC here, I'm looking at your Elevates. I guess I've included Chiefs, CAG, D+, Scars. Can they just get some solid wins, even 2 wins? Can they, finish 2-3 on the, get some SI points, all of that kind of stuff? If any of them can make it, great. But it's so hard to put them down in a prediction standpoint. So outside of them, there's actually only one team that we both haven't actually gone for or talked about, which we've either predicted them or it's APAC or it's SSG. Can the boys from PlayStation Gaming get into phase 3? Did it in Atlanta?
I mean, I like the point that you brought up about W7M, and so I'd bundle those 2 teams together, W7M and SSG, to be probably the most likely contenders to knock out the likes of G2VP, Team Liquid. Those are the teams that I've got making it through at the bottom. I think it would be a very strong case to be made that one of those could be exchanged out for either SSG or W7M. I mean, NA domestically continues to be such a strong competition, and then it's just about stringing that together internationally. I think you could... Yeah, of Sonic's DZ, SSG, 2 of them will more than likely make it through to phase 3. So it's kind of just whatever combination that you kind of feel comfortable going for. I just felt more comfortable with Sonic's and DZ. A lot of that being hedged on, obviously, that epic grand final and the storylines, etc. And I do genuinely think that they are the 2 best teams from the region, and it will translate overseas. It's tricky to make a case for a third to sneak through. It would be remarkable for North America if they're able to pull it off. I just don't think it's that likely.
Can North America make a grand final?
I hope they make a grand final in their own region. Will they, though? Well, again, I think BDS are rather untouchable for a grand final spot, but FaZe could be vulnerable, most definitely. I think a really fired up Sonics or DZ or even SSG, if they go on to make a potential run as well, could knock off FaZe with the home ground advantage.
I mean, last time out, it's also, and this is the thing, right? It depends on your side of the bracket, but like, and I know obviously Beast Coast won Manchester, but I'm looking more so to the teams that we've got here, right? So like the North American teams that we've got, I look at Dark Zero as being the best bet. They ran into BDS in that semi-final in Manchester. I that's why I've got them in my kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th. I think they've certainly got those capabilities. So then the question is, can say a Sonics, can they continue to rise? Is there a world in which an SSG go on a bit of a run? I mean, these are certainly all possibilities. And, I know it's not quite the same, DZ team and all the changes with Canadian over to Sonics and stuff like that from Manchester. There's certainly been a bit of time since then. But if anything, it's been obviously a huge boon for Sonics. Maybe you could even swap Sonics and DZ around in terms of where I've got them. It's going to be quite fascinating. I look at North America as the wild card for phase 3, right? In terms of what they can do. Because I think when you look at the Brazilian teams, FaZe, Liquid, I know you're not as big on W7M, but you wouldn't be shocked if they make it through. And then you got BDS, Team Secret, G2, etc. BDS kind of like really carries EU. Like EU is very top heavy with BDS because the rest of them are quite fallible. So it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I just don't see APAC getting in on the party.
Unfortunately, I agree. As much as I would love to cast an APAC team in the arena, the chances of that happening, less than 25% probably. They're going to have a lot go their way in a well-suited bracket for them with some good matchups. So, yeah.
Do you take anything away from something like an esports World Cup, just kind of casting your mind back where a lot of those teams, you know, for what was the last LAN that we had prior to this major, they got to play in that environment, scrim those teams. And if you kind of think back, it was a lot of the Brazilian teams that dominated outside of BDS, who then dominated them. But you go back to the Final Four, Liquid, W7M, Furia, BDS. I mean, do you kind of take any of that into this event, or is too much water gone under the bridge?
I feel like the meta has just developed pretty significantly from that event, where teams have really now truly started to unlock and abuse shields far more, and those that are comfortable have risen to the top, and those like Furia that aren't as comfortable have unfortunately fallen. So I think that's going to be the same tale with no significant patch heading into this particular major. I suppose, you know, Liquid being top 4 EWC is interesting. A lot of people are pretty bearish on Team Liquid at an international level, but that result, you know, is quite strong. I don't necessarily know if it will, or think it will translate to a top 4 here in Montreal, but I wouldn't be shocked if they make a phase 3 and then get knocked out first match.
All right, final question here, guys. I'm going to throw a curveball because I know I've written down major winner early pred, but we both are going to say BDS. So who wins that's not BDS? We're taking them out of the equation altogether, which that in itself is quite telling. But if it's not BDS, who have you got that would be essentially taking them down and claiming the trophy?
Well, I mean, the easiest answer to that would obviously be FaZe, because I have them also to first, second Swiss. But I suppose if you cancel them out as well, and I'm also not 100% bullish on FaZe being able to go all the way. FaZe will be solid. Like, they're going to 100%, or almost like 99% chance of them making phase 3 in my eyes. But I don't know if they'll necessarily have that extra gear that they can find to win an international event. You talk about extra gears, and from a storyline perspective and the team's potential ceiling as well, it probably has to be Sonic. I think Canadian being in that team, the amount of experience that he has and the ability to show up and help his team show up at almost every single international event is just an insane record that speaks for itself. So if it isn't BDS, or if it's a team to join BDS at least in the grand final, whether they win it or not, I think Sonics have quite a strong chance. And if not them, I'm actually pretty bullish on Secret as well, to be quite a strong team from EU, probably the only other team from EU that could, you know, go the distance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of like putting this almost in a like 1, 2, 3 category with BDS 1, phase 2, so then my wildcard third that, you know, potentially could win the major. Oh boy. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really... for me, you're almost then putting like Liquid, Sonic, Secret, W7M all kind of in that little bundle in terms of who could kind of pull off a bit of an upset. I might just go Liquid just for the sake of it feels like they've been due for a while. They finished top of the standings when it came to the regular portion of Brazil. Ultimately did get smashed by FaZe, not only in said regular, it was their one and only regulation loss, but then 2-0'd in the upper bracket final. So I mean, that's something to consider, that they're certainly still a little bit behind that 8 ball, but if they can kind of string together a run, and we've already seen when it comes to these majors, you can go on a run. Teams can get hot. Teams can start playing some really good Siege. Not even necessarily even at the major, even at SI, for example, you can see that from certain teams. So there's always one team that finds form that we didn't know they quite had, or at least in this period of time, we didn't know that they quite had. So I could see a Liquid maybe pulling off an upset win against a FaZe, for example, breaking that kind of hoodoo and then moving on from there, and who knows, could go on a run. So if I had to pick a third, yeah, I might just throw a curveball in there for Liquid, but definitely for both of us, FaZe BDS grand final, I think is ultimately the most likely, and I honestly hope it is. I think that'd be awesome.
I would personally probably prefer an NA team to match them, so like a BDS Sonics or a BDS Dark Zero, or the ultimate match if you want to go full
Sonics
NA,
DZ,
like a Sonics DZ rematch.
Oh.
That would be tantalizing, but it would be a same region matchup, so they're a bit shit in that regard. But SI was the same, and that was good. So.
Yeah. Look, honestly, I think to kind of close a little bit here as we reach the end of this episode, I feel like it's going to be a good major, but I also feel like there's a chance BDS are just like absolute front runners and they just downhill ski and just take this almost in a similar fashion to like Esports World Cup, where there were good moments in that event, but BDS were the shining moment across the board and accumulated with a standout grand final where no one could touch them on that day. No one could touch them. They were the best team in the world. So if they bring that same energy, they'll be the ones claiming the trophy in my eyes. But when I look at the event as a whole, guys, and I'll get your final thoughts as well, but phase 1, man, it's going to be, that's just a Royal Rumble. Have fun. Let's see who makes it out of that. Phase 2, probably a bit of a beat up on APAC. Could there be some storylines? Teams like Elevate, no real pressure. Go in, get some experience. Maybe knock off a team here or there. So some teams, and there's always one or two, they're going to crumble. Teams we've predicted might not make it, yada, yada, yada. And I think it's all set up, though, for a pretty strong phase 3.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a bit of a coin flip event. It's going to go one or two ways. I very much agree with the sentiment that this could be an EWC 2.0 where BDS just wipe the floor. And if no other team, like a Beast Coast Manchester, can step up and have a bit of a miracle performance and match them and surpass them, they could run away a little bit with this event. But equally, on the other side of the coin, if BDS trip up or there is a team that makes a big run, whether it be like maybe a Sonics or a Dark Zero or even someone completely on the fringe that we're not even considering at the moment, then it should really be a fun event. The added caveat to all of this, or the additional layering, is SI points. The standings are insane. It's going to be super tight with only top 16 as well. So
I think that'll be
another
review.
that's going to be another really intriguing storyline to be tracking throughout the event, as complex as that can be at times with all the permutations. So yeah, it's not just the winner of this event that's going to be exciting. It's all the other teams. Keep in mind, probably teams for phase 1 as well, really scrapping for a spot forward to maybe lunge themselves into the top 16 at the last dying moments of the year. So yeah, hopefully it will be a good event, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yep, absolutely looking forward to it. Hopefully everyone is as well. Big time of the year with the major just around the corner. Big thank you to everyone who has made it this far, tuned in all the way. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button. Helps us immensely. Apparently gets us to Thailand.
Are you in an earthquake right now?
I keep knocking my table and it knocks the camera. Hit the like button, subscribe button. It helps us out, gets us to Thailand, gives us a good time. We appreciate it so greatly. As of course for our Patreon, if you want to come and subscribe, now is the best time. Over the next month, we've of course got the Discord, lots of chatter when it comes to these majors. You can talk with the community. It's always a blast. Come in, give us your thoughts. If you want us to answer any questions, that's the place to do so. And of course, that will get answered on our exclusive section, which we're going to be filming very shortly. If you want to come in, see more, we're going to be discussing some intriguing topics, most notably some cheating drama with, what is it, Clar? Yeah. Well,
it's dead now.
Fuck the cheaters. All right, into the exclusive portion, and we'll see you at the major. Bye-bye, everyone.